Welcome. For this tutorial, we're just going to go over where to start. You should have already received some initial training, but you may have questions now that you're in it and you have punches from the employees on where to go, where to begin, just as a refresher. So we're going to try to do that in this video today. So we're going to go to the time link up next to payroll, and that's going to bring us into our time and attendance. Now, if you haven't already done it, setting up your dashboard is very helpful to let you know where you need to go first, perhaps. Under dashboard, my dashboard setup, you'll have a list of options that you can select to have posted to your dashboard. And each time you sign in or each time you go to your My Dashboard, those particular widgets will show up for you with the information that's specific to them. Clock status. If you have a hardware clock or a tablet, this is good. Otherwise, mostly what you're looking for is missing punches, maybe approaching overtime, possibly pending time off requests if your employees are allowed to request time off through the various apps and clocks. Maybe overtime by department might be important to you, upcoming PTO, who's in, upcoming employees' anniversaries. These are basically their hire dates, and it would show you, so and so's coming up on their 5th year of employment. Maybe a who's on break or lunch. Now, I've also got early out, late in, and absent employees. Unless you're assigning schedules to the employees, these really aren't going to do anything for you. And bear in mind, you don't have to have schedules in the system. But if you wanted to see who's late, who's leaving early, who's absent today, then definitely you would need to apply schedules to the employees in order for these to show you that relevant information. Once you've selected what you want to see, you just click Save, click OK, and then when you click on My Dashboard, you'll be able to see that information. One of the main things that you're going to be doing is the punch exceptions, regardless of everything else that's going on. These are the punches that need to be fixed prior to submitting payroll. An exception is simply any punch over 16 hours that does not have a match. So a case where somebody clocked out here, but they missed their in punch. Somebody clocked in here, but they missed their out punch. So this just tells me, looking at it at a glance, that I do need to correct some punches. I can see I've got some pending time off requests that need to be taken care of. I've got employees that are absent. These are the people coming up on overtime. Now, this is one of them that are interactive, so I could click on this and maybe change it to 10 hours, and anybody that's got over 10 hours is going to show up in my list for me. Upcoming PTO, you've got different options you can select and see who's got it coming up within, in this case, the next 6 months. So this is the dashboard. It prevents you from having to go in and run reports. You can come into it every day, every couple of days, and be able to keep an eye on what's going on. And it lets you know whether you need to go any further or not. But the punch exceptions, again, is the most critical. That's going to be under our edits and time management. And I click on that. I've got my exceptions, my PTO requests, and my timesheet tab. This is where you're going to be 99.9% of the time, because their punches need to be fixed. PTO needs to be approved. And you may or may not be approving the employee's timesheet through the timesheet tab. So one at a time you could do that, but also approving, you could just go to edits and approvals to approve everyone en masse. So I can see right here, these are my missing punches, my exceptions, and this is the punch we have. The blank spot is what we're missing. I can fix this from here just by clicking on the line. I'm able to do the entry here, but I'm also able to see what's going on in their timesheet from this time frame. So I'm going to look at the 9/16. I do have a punch from 7 a.m. to 3:30 already. So that kind of lets me know maybe this is an incorrect punch. Since the timeout was 5 p.m., we can assume that she probably should have clocked in after 3:30, or maybe she clocked out at 3:30 and got called back to work and then clocked out again at 5 p.m. So we can assume that. I can come through here and look for 3:30 p.m. But for me, it's faster just to type in 3:30 p.m. like this. You'll notice I didn't do the date, and I click outside the box, it automatically brings the date from this side over. So unless they're working over midnight, I don't need to worry about the date. I would add my note. In this case, called back to work before leaving. And then I would come over here and click save. That's going to create another entry and calculate this time, add it to this punch, and everything is fine. It may be, however, that you want to delete this punch and simply go in and edit this out punch and leave your note for that rather than having two entries for the day. It's a personal preference on what you want to do, but I'm going to cancel this so we can see how to do that. Now I can click on timesheet, or I can come down here and click on her name. I'm just going to click on her name. I'm lazy. I don't want to move my mouse that much. It automatically brings me to her timesheet, but I do need to make sure that I'm in the correct pay period for this missing punch. You'll notice on the timesheet it's in red. This is an exception or an incomplete punch. If she would have clocked in today, we'll just do one for her for today at 7 a.m. It would also be red, but we would see it down towards the bottom. Now she's already got a punch for the 4th that I added in already prior to this, but this is going to line up with wherever chronologically that punch goes. And because it's today, I'm going to ignore it. It's simply an incomplete punch. In other words, I've only got one side, I don't have the other. It is not an exception, and it will not show up here in the exceptions because it's not more than 16 hours old. I'm interested in the ones prior to today. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to go to the time frame that fits, that punch falls within, which would be the 15th through the 21st. That's going to bring up her time for that. And here I can see the 16th, 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Now, I might want to just delete this punch and then click on this line and change this time to the 5 p.m. Add a note or add to the note if need be of why I'm doing this, and then come back over and click save. So the choice is yours on how you want to do that. You can even click here instead of being in the exceptions. You can even click here and add 3:30 p.m. right here, your note, and then save. 6 1/2 dozen the other. It's going to give the hours the employee has worked to be able to be pushed to payroll. I can also approve time from here. If I click on show approvals, you're going to be the payroll admin and you will click sign off here. I don't recommend signing off for the supervisor or for the employee. This can lead to issues if you're being audited or something like that, where they're going to come back to you and say, why did you sign off for the employee? It could look like you're not on the up and up. So leave these alone for them, basically. Because you're the admin, you do have the ability, but if an employee signed off, and I'm just signing off basically as the employee, it is submitted. If I try to edit anything in this timesheet, I can't. So because I'm the admin, I have the ability to revert their sign off. And now I could come in and click and I could edit something if need be. Once that's completed, if I require the employees to approve their time, I would then go back to the employee and say, okay, take a look, see if it's okay, and reapprove your uh, approval. And once they've done that, I will be able to sign off. Once you have signed off, no one else is able to either sign off or revert their approval. At that moment, it's pretty much written in stone, and only you would be able to go back and revert it in order for them to either revert theirs or approve theirs. So it's important to approve this prior to pushing these hours to payroll. I'm going to go back and look at this other pay period here, because in it we see overlapping time. What this means is the employee had a punch from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., and the administrator or supervisor added a bulk time entry starting at 8 a.m. for 3 hours, which ended at 11. But these 3 hours are also being paid up here during the 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, this isn't necessarily a mistake. You may intend to pay them their 8 hours for this plus an additional 3 hours. If that was the intent, you're fine. It's going to go across to payroll just like this with these hours. This is simply here to let you know that you potentially could have a problem and to bring your attention to it. Now, I could edit this and change the time and put it at 4 p.m. or even 4 a.m. to keep this from being overlapped. But again, the overlap is not going to stop these hours from all going into payroll. It, again, just here to let you know that maybe you did the wrong date or the wrong times or something like that, and it's just there to draw your attention to it. Now, unless you're looking at the timesheets or refreshing once you've added an entry to see if that's done, um, these may not always be brought front and center, but in your reports, time and duplicates overlap, you should run this prior to submitting your payroll pay period list. And last pay period, I'm just going to keep it on this one here because that's where that exists. Leave everything else blank and just click generate. Anyone that has an overlap is going to appear here, and you can decide whether this is something that's okay or whether you need to go to this person's timesheet and evaluate and modify anything here. So that again is under reports, time, and duplicates overlap. Something that should be ran prior to pushing your pay period across or your payroll hours into payroll. The other part here is our PTO requests. I can see that these are all green. They're in the future. If one of them was white or shaded blue in here, that means that it's this pay period. I need to take care of these prior to approving the timesheets. If I approve the timesheet and one of these is up here, let's just go ahead and revert. So if I approve this person's timesheet for this date range, this would disappear from me totally. Once you approve it, it means I'm done. I don't care what else is going on, I'm done. The PTO request notices you've approved it, and they simply remove this out of your view. It would, however, stay pending in the employee view unless the employee deletes it, or if we were to click on add new PTO request, go to the employee, I can see that 821 is still in pending. If I wanted, I could delete that from here while it is pending. But you'll notice I've got approved. I can't delete anything that's approved. It's already approved or denied, and we can't delete it. I would have to revert it from here And then I could go to the add new PTO request, find the employee, and delete it altogether. I prefer that even if you do revert it, such as we did here, I would rather deny it and leave a note so that the employee has a record of why it was reverted and denied, and they'll be able to see that if they question that 7 months from now, why they didn't get paid for it. They'll see your note, jog their memory. Oh, yeah, I remember I did that. So, that to me is a better way of handling anything that needs to be reverted rather than simply coming in and just deleting it. But again, that's your call. You can do either or. If I need to approve a request, I just click approve. Normally, I don't need to add a note, but if you wanted to, you can. But I would just click accept. That moves it into my resolved. That means it's ready to go. And on the time period or the pay period that these fall on, they will appear in their timesheet up here. Again, if the employee comes back and says, hey, plans changed, you are able to revert that and then deny it up here or have the employee modify it or delete it themselves. Your call. This tells you the day of the week they want, the time of the day that they need to start it, if it's a partial day or if it's all day, the bank they're using. If that bank is set up to allow them to go negative, the number of hours they want to deduct, the number they have left in their bank, and the date and time of the request in case you get multiple people and can't afford to give everyone the time off, so you can choose based on who asked first. Now, if I don't know if I can give somebody time off on the 18th, I can look at this view PTOs in calendar, go to November, show PTO, and I don't have anybody currently off on the 18th, so I would be comfortable in approving this request for her. Approving employees en masse is going to edits and approvals, and I can see everyone's hours, their overtime, any paid time away, such as sick, vacation, holiday, all lumped under here, the total number that's going to be on their paycheck, and I can see if the employees approved it, the supervisor, or if I have through here. Now, prior to pushing the hours to payroll, but after making sure all of the exceptions have done and the time off requests have been approved, I would click here, come down, click sign off, click OK, and I'm going to visually inspect every person that I wanted signed off to make sure that there is a green A. If one of them shows up without the green A, it's still the white P. I would need to go to that employee and look at their timesheet and possibly reprocess the BRM, because if it doesn't approve when I want it, then that means the employee likely has something that is pending and not processed. Reprocess the BRM, okay. Wait 5 to 10 seconds, and then refresh. And it should go to processed. If not, contact support. But once that's done, I can click show approvals here quickly, and I would be able to click sign off. Of course, we've already signed him off. But then that would be done, and I would be ready for my next steps for payroll. And that might include running a report, say a simple time summary. And most all reports are going to run in these ways. I'm going to choose my date range, and we're going to do pay period for this. And we'll do default for that particular pay period. I'm going to leave all this blank. I want to see all the employees, all divisions, all departments, everything in here. So I'm just going to leave it all blank, and the system will assume that I want to see everything. If I only need to see it for a specific division or employee, then I can select them at that time. I'm going to click generate, and I can see this. From here, I can print it using the print icon from my browser. If I want to save it as a PDF, I can do that here and then save, or I could click down, Acrobat PDF. Maybe I want to view page 2 before I do any of that. Okay. Acrobat PDF, I can click export and it'll save to wherever my files save on the computer when I'm saving from a browser. Once I'm satisfied everything is done there, I'm going to come over here to my push payroll hours. So payroll functions, exports, push payroll hours. You're typically going to be pushing the second one down. It's not going to do you any good to push this one because the employees are not approved. Your next pay period would be the second one down. You will click push to payroll. Time cards push successfully. And now I'm done with time. I can go to payroll to do uh, my payroll processing. So those are the basic steps that you're going to need to process the payroll. Something else that you'll need to do in here after payroll has been done and everything is good, the checks have been cut, you should come back to close pay period and close the pay period that you just did. Now, some people can leave 2 or 3 open just in case something happens in the future and they want to come back and correct it in time. If your accruals are annually or by the month for PTO and sick and things like that, then you can afford to leave a couple open. If your accruals are based on each pay period the employee works or X amount per hour that they're worked, then these need to be closed as soon as possible so that the system updates the hours in their PTO banks for this pay period. But a word of caution, you never want to close these until hours have been pushed, payroll is complete, and checks are on their way. Once that happens, you can come in and close the pay period. Bear in mind, once you close this, you lose the ability to reopen it. This is different from the approving because you can go back in and open, even if you've pushed your payroll hours and corrected things on time. As long as you haven't closed the pay period yet, you could go back and unapprove or revert the approval, make your changes, and then sign off or approve that timesheet again. Once you come in and close a pay period, it's a done deal. You can still see the time, you can still run reports, you just can't modify them. Another thing you need to be aware of is when you add a new employee to payroll, you do need to come here to the employees, employee import, and you will click import employees. Now, when it imports, it's basically bringing everybody in, whether they're active or inactive. It's not going to activate people, but it looks for any major changes that have been done. And if you change somebody's name and they're inactive, it will update that for you. But normally, any changes done in payroll to the employee's name, hire date, rate of pay, and things like that are going to come over automatically. It's only the new employees that you add to payroll that you need to then come here, go to employees, employee import, and import employees. And that's going to bring the brand new ones into the system, allowing them to be able to clock in or out. There might be times where you need to change something on the employee details from time to time, or even if they're brought in new, if you've got different types of employees. So we're going to bring in the basic policies on each employee that you bring in, but you may need to assign them a particular holiday plan depending on the employee. You may need to assign them a specific PTO plan. You may want to give them a different PIN. You may want to assign a different card ID. Do not change the other ID. This is their payroll ID, and this is extremely important. But, these are the items that you may need to change from time to time on different employees, depending on how the company is set up and, how detailed it is and things like that for your policies. As a reminder, the e-time clock or web clock URL, if your employees are using a web clock to clock in or out with, can always be found right here under the time clock 9. So when I click this, there's the URL for my employees. I can highlight it, copy it, and email it to my employees so that they can clock in or out from their workstation. So these are the basics to get you started and hopefully refresh your memory over the items that we went over during your training. As always, if you need assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out to support staff so that we can assist you and make sure things are going as you need. Thank you for watching.